So, how many secrets do you think there are in the early areas of the dungeon in Fear and Hunger? Well, this video's got 11. Do you think you know them all? How about this? If you do, then I've got to make another video. But if there's even one you don't know, then you've got to tell me in the comments. Deal? Let's go. We're starting off with probably the most overlooked and secretive of the secrets. Fear and Hunger is a notoriously difficult game, and even having a single extra party member can change the tide of battle, especially early on. Did you know that you can get an extra party member as soon as you enter? In the entrance halls, if you look carefully, you can find a cage. Inside, there's a crying child. A strange sight for the dungeons indeed. If you can figure out a way to unlock her cage, you can recruit her as a party member. Hang on, everybody knew that? But I only just found out recently. I thought that was really well hidden. Well, since you all know so much about the girl, how about we get rid of her then? Luckily for us, she's not just a useful party member, but also serves as currency. There's 3 different beings in the dungeon who want to trade something for the girl. 2 traders are a bit deep down for this video, so we'll just look at the first. The human Hydra. It's hungry. Really hungry, and requests that you give it the girl. If you do so, you'll get a special reward. Well, perhaps it's best if I don't spoil what the reward is here. Around the corner from the Hydra, you'll see 3 black priests praying and preparing a sacrifice. They're not very hard to fight as long as you avoid their lanterns and interrupt them with annoying questions. And they drop some very useful loot for unlocking skills in the nearby hexen table. But they can also drop a very rare item, the priest's robe. It lets you disguise as one of these priests and talk to them outside of combat. They have some very interesting information about just what's happening in these dungeons. Also in this area, you'll find the library. It's the second place you'll likely find a hoard of books, which are very useful in these games, and you should search every bookshelf you can find. Knowledge is power. If you did search the first bookshelf early in the dungeon, you may have noticed a strange item, the mock-up book. It's a fake book. Well, as it turns out, there's an entire fake bookshelf in the deeper library. If you put the mock-up book here, then a mysterious passage. Dare we go through? Well, obviously. Outside you'll find the Courtyard. It's the closest thing to a safe space in the dungeons, and frankly, even that's relative. Here you'll find Ragnvalder, the fiery outlander who doesn't want to join you just quite yet. The Butterfly, a miserable creature I've covered thoroughly in a previous video. The Bunny Cultists, who I can't actually show what they do here, can I? But they give you a full HP heal if you spend some time with them. There's also a dagger lying on the ground here. It's too small for you, of course, but it's the perfect size for the little girl, and is likely the first actual weapon you can find for her. Or would be if you didn't just feed her to the Hydra. Behind this, there's a pile of rubble. If you have an explosive vial, you can open up this pathway into a small area called the Thicket. It has its own mysteries, and we'll cover that in a future video. Sneaking back into the dungeon, there's a little more to discover in these rooms yet. Here we meet Trotter, the dungeon's torturer. I covered him in depth in a previous video, the tragic stories of fear and hunger, but briefly, he has a few interesting interactions. You can just kill him quickly. He's probably the easiest enemy to kill this early in the game. Also, you can tell him where Prince Buckman is hiding, and he'll give you a reward. Later on, you can find another member of Buckman's party, Jean, and give her to Trotter too. As a final reward for her, he'll give you a key to his secret treasure, and tell you how to reach it. You can also just take the key from him with steel if you want to skip this long process. The treasure is the bloodthirsty penance armor, which is tied for the highest defense stats in the game with the gaunt plate armor, which incidentally is held by another member of Buckman's party, but the penance armor has a special trait that the other doesn't. In combat, your limbs cannot be removed by anything. The downside is that you can't take the armor off at all, and the spikes inside make you constantly bleed. With how strong the armor is though, it's usually worth it. But we're not quite done here yet. When roaming about this part of the dungeon, you'll probably notice the holes in the floor you can fall into. Even after 100 hours of playing, they still get me, but there's one here that you actually want to fall into. On the eastern side of the rooms, sometimes you'll find a hole that, if you fall through, will lead to a hidden part of the prisons below. There's a chest and some free resources to loot here, so it's actually pretty handy. There's one more secret in the prison I'd like to mention. The doll you can find here in one of the cells. People think it was made by Kahara since it's in the cell with him, but it's likely he'd only been there a short time, as the 4 heroes didn't arrive too far apart. It's much more likely that the doll was made by Lagarde, because, did you know, that he spent time in those cells when he was first brought to the dungeons, tortured by Trautor, and then brought down to the deepest layer at the behest of the priest. The doll is of a long, light brown hair man, which matches Lagarde's description. Perhaps he wanted to give the girl something to remember him by. Or perhaps he was carving his own idols in the same way Allmere did. Returning from the prisons, we find another member of Buckman's party, Sir Seymour. He'd been attacked deeper in the dungeons and chased all the way back to here, closer to the surface, but what is that attacked him? It's a scarab, an acid-spitting creature from Mahab, but how did that get up here? We find Jean and Sir Cyril inside Mahab too. Buckman's party got very deep inside the dungeon before running all the way back. It raises some interesting questions too. How did Buckman's party even enter the city at all? Well, it's not really clear. There's multiple ways to enter Mahab that don't need the cube, like dying or dreaming, but I don't think that's what happened to Buckman's party. Perhaps there's hidden entrances that we just don't see in-game. There's other characters who have gotten into the city too, like the Body Snatchers, so I imagine it's just that. Right outside where we see Sir Seymour, there's a really big, really mean enemy that you should basically never fight because the reward isn't very good. Unless you're planning on doing Ragnvaldr's S ending, of course. But did you know that the Iron Shakespeare actually does have some good loot? You need steel, and if you use it in combat against him, you'll get either a quill or, more importantly, a blank scroll. The quill isn't as useful since you can get them from crates, but the blank scroll is huge early game. If you're unfamiliar, blank scrolls let you ask Allmere for basically anything in the game with very few exceptions. Just write, "Oh Lord, give item," and you'll be given one. You can also get skills this way too. It's an absolutely amazing system, and as such, blank scrolls are pretty rare. If you're playing Kahara and have steel, then it's definitely worth your time to try this one out. Close by, near the entrance to this room, you'll see some graves. Most of the names don't seem to be people that we know. The developer of the game, Miro, once said that there's a handful of references to characters that people made when the game was just a pen and paper adventure, long before it was put to code, and I suspect that the people on these graves are just that. As far as I'm aware though, this hasn't been explicitly confirmed, so it may just be flavor text. One of the graves, however, is a character we know and love. It's the grave of Chef Anders, the author of the cookbooks we can find in both games. The books are more gossip than actual cooking instruction, and Anders seems to have been quite the rascal. Not only did he allegedly seduce the Princess of Rondon, but he also killed and cooked his rival chef into a feast. Why he was put into the dungeons isn't explicitly known, but if these stories are even close to true, then perhaps it's not that much of a mystery. They're not the only graves we can find, though. In the next room, closer to the entrance of the dungeons, we can find the Black Witch. Or, rather, it finds us. If you're not careful, you'll trigger the trap that has been laid in the hallways here, and be sucked into the dark realm, reminiscent of Rare's realm in Termina. The Black Witch will taunt you and eventually attack you, and this early in the game, it's pretty tough to fight. And if you beat it here, you don't even get a reward. But everyone's triggered that trap before, so that can't be the secret. The real secret is that there's hidden graves in this realm. If you push through the darkness, you can find them. In fact, you can find your grave. Whichever character you're playing as shows up here, and funnily enough, this is how we found the canon birth years and ages of each of the characters. And their possible year of death, too. Back in reality, and we can find the last secret in this area. What's behind the steel doors? To open them, you need a crow emblem key. So, simply kill the crow mauler. Or if you have leg sweep, just delete the door. Inside you'll find piles and piles of corpses, the room stinking of gore, and at the end, the unholy sword whispering into your mind. Miasma. This is one of the best weapons in the game, but it comes with a price. If you're holding miasma and have low mind, when you enter certain locations, well. The same thing happens with your party members, but with a couple of exceptions. Skeletons can hold the sword and won't lose their minds to miasma, but strangely enough, Lagarde won't either. Perhaps he alone among the human companions has the mental fortitude to withstand it. So, how did you do? Did you know all of these? This video is the fourth in a series, so if you liked it, then make sure to check out the others. The playlist will be linked in the description. Special thank you to all bonesjones for some of the extra footage used in this video. He's got a lot of great videos on his channel for Fear and Hunger 1, so make sure you go check him out. This video was made possible by my patrons. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming one. You can get your name in main channel videos, you can see scripts, and even see videos a week early than the general public. Thank you very much for watching, and my name's More They Do, and I'll see you next time.